Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the Gospel of John. Today we are wrapping up our look at John chapter 9. We've spent several sessions looking at this wonderful chapter in which Jesus heals the man who had been blind from birth. Today we're looking at verses 39 through 41, the last few verses of the chapter. Now you recall, this healing was a demonstration of what Jesus had said when he had claimed, "I am the light of the world." Jesus said, "I'm the light." And now he shows that in this man's life. The man who had lived his whole life in darkness now comes into the light. He sees. Not only physical light, but he also comes into spiritual light. For his spiritual darkness is also dispelled as he sees Jesus, who is the light of the world, and believes in him, who is the Son of Man. What a wonderful miracle and a demonstration of who Jesus is, the light of the world. But notice how the chapter ends. Jesus has something to say. And it makes it clear that you can either come to him and see the light, or you can turn away from him and continue to live in darkness. So let's read these last few verses, starting at verse 39. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into the world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind." Now some Pharisees who were with him, they heard him say this, and they asked, "What? Are we blind too?" Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains." So Jesus said, "My coming into the world brings judgment. And the judgment is based on how people respond to me. If you believe in me, trust in me, put your faith in me, then the blind will see, just as this man is seeing today. If you believe in me, you'll see. But if you refuse, then though you thought you were seeing, you actually become blind." You see, it all revolves around what we do with Jesus. If we'll come to him, the light will see. Not only physically, but spiritually we'll see. But if we refuse him, if we turn our backs on him, if we become obstinate in unbelief, as the Pharisees were, we'll be judged to live in darkness, because that's the choice we've made. Now there were some Pharisees who were nearby, and they heard Jesus say this, and they realized, of course, he was talking about them. And they said, "What are you saying? We're blind?" And Jesus said, "If you were truly blind, you wouldn't be guilty. You'd have a chance to see. But because you claim to see and yet refuse to believe in me, you are caught in guilt." In other words, you've brought judgment upon yourself. So when Jesus says for judgment he came, it's not so much that he comes to condemn, but that he comes to offer the chance of salvation. And those who refuse to accept the offer of salvation condemn themselves to live in blindness, condemn themselves to live in darkness. Jesus has come to save, but those who refuse to accept his salvation are choosing to live their life in utter spiritual darkness, and thus bringing judgment upon themselves. So this miracle of a healing of a man who had been blind all of his life, this miracle is such a demonstration of who Jesus is. He's the light, and he comes to bring light to all who will believe. But to all who refuse to believe, they are condemned to live in darkness by their very refusal. For you see, to choose not to believe is to choose to remain in spiritual darkness. So out of this story comes the blind man who can now see, but also comes the Pharisees who cannot see because they've chosen to walk in darkness. You know, the question for us is, what will we choose? Will we be like the man who had been blind and believe in Jesus, choose him, trust him, so that we can see? Or will we be like the Pharisees who turn our backs on Jesus and decide to walk in darkness? May we be like the man. May we say, "Yes, I believe you are the Son of Man, O Lord. I believe you are the one." And may we come to know the light, the only light, that spiritual revelation that allows us to walk in the light of God's love and mercy and grace. Jesus is the light of the world, and he gives light to all who will trust him and believe. Hope you join us tomorrow as we continue our 5-minute Bible study in the Gospel of John. And in our next session, we'll begin looking at John chapter